Tom, I grow weary of addressing these disgusting, treasonous pretenders. The fires dictate it is now time for the one true king. How could the Baratheons have won the Game of Thrones? Before we dive into that, be sure to check out our Lannister and Stark videos that came before. The Stark one is the most important as it establishes the rules, and the Lannister one was more of a pilot/proof of concept, and we're certainly going to circle back around and do a long form take on the lines. And don't forget to like and subscribe, we're putting in the hours now guys, come on, it's the least you could do. As with the Starks, we do have some restrictions to place on the Manus, and that is we must keep him his uncompromising self.
That my beloved brother Robert left.
Wasn't my beloved brother? I didn't love him. He didn't love me.
A harmless courtesy, Your Grace.
A lie. Take it out.
No dirty double dealing or dishonorable to Stannis' code anyway, actions are permitted. Renly is also restricted in a similar manner, and must remain his well-intentioned and good-natured self, coupled with his lofty ambitions and hidden ruthless streak. So, with that out of the way, let's get started. What are the Stag's goals? Simply put, their rightful rule of the Seven Kingdoms and not a kingdom less, which is going to make dealing with the North bloody annoying, Tom. The Stags, like all the houses, begin with several advantages and disadvantages. Beginning with strengths, the Baratheons have one of the most politically astute and ambitious people in Westeros in Renly, and one of, if not the most uncompromising, skilled and experienced battle commanders in Stannis. They also have the advantage of being the only faction in the right when it comes to matters of the throne and law. By Bobby B's laws of succession, Stannis is legally the king, and has ground to stand on. We just need to convince others of that. Where they are disadvantaged is in their strengths being double-edged. Renly's unjustified ambition to be king, and Stannis himself as a person. He is a charisma vacuum despite being rather honorable, and he holds uncompromising morals, making wiggle room and negotiating alliance a very difficult thing. Nevertheless, what steps can they take to get on that throne that's rightfully theirs? Now I know someone will mention timings in the comments if I don't mention it here, so step 1 and 2 are supposed to be done in unison. The reason for this is because they synergize well and help each other's feasibility, and timing is of the essence with both of them. So even though one comes before 2, they're done at the same time. Or maybe it's more accurate to say you do a little bit of step 1, a little bit of step 2, bit of step 1, bit of step 2, that sort of thing, because they work really well together. Now, first things first, stop the childish bickering. You had to know this one was coming first because it's simply the most sensible first move. Before setting out with their armies, Stannis and Renly need to bury the hatchet and unite as a single faction. They both have strengths that complement and shore up the other's weaknesses. Renly presents a much softer and more amicable side to Stannis' cause when it comes to securing alliances, and Stannis actually has the legal claim and tactical skill, able to make best use of their armies. How this comes about is all on Renly's side, I'm afraid. Stannis made a more than fair enough offer by offering to make Renly his heir until he has a son. Renly flatly refuses, because he thinks Tyrell's support will completely guarantee victory against his brother. The only way I can see Stannis helping the situation is by sending someone else with the gift of the gab to word it to Renly in a way that makes sense. Send Davos to do the talking in private. He can more tactfully explain to Renly that Stannis has the legitimate claim, is the most experienced living battle commander of the two of you, and backing him would be wise. He could also let Renly know that the likelihood of Stannis having a son is slim to none, persuading Renly that patience will win him a more secure claim and lower the risk of being assassinated as a usurper, than just declaring himself king because he thinks he'd be good at the job.
He's not a king. I am.
We already know many of you will comment that Renly was far too stubborn and would never take a deal like this because he thought his victory was assured. But Renly is no Joffrey. He can be reasoned with. Davos has got his work cut out for him, but combined with step 2, which is actually the second half of step 1, it's not impossible. We also have Melisandre, who might be able to scare Renly into supporting his older brother, were she to get some, alone time with him. The advantage this brings is beyond obvious, really. It brings the Stormlands together as a united faction instead of bickering pockets of individual houses, and it presents them to potential allies and enemies as a single, solid faction, which can de-incentivize the more clandestine methods of infiltrate, divide, and conquer. This does, however, cause some knock-on effects that have to be accounted for and later compensated for in a later step. If Renly does see sense and declare himself a Stannis under the condition he be made heir, then we can probably wave bye to the Tyrells' support. The Tyrells are easily the most slippery and self-interested house of the bunch. That's why we love them. And they only declared for Renly because they thought it would net them half a throne. Stannis is already married and doesn't take kindly to political maneuvering. Needless to say, the Stags will at best lose their most powerful supporting vassal and at worst make an enemy of the Tyrells. Now you might say they'll be obligated to lend support if this is post-marriage to Marjorie, but most are aware of Renly's preferences, and I have no doubt whatsoever that will be leveraged to nullify the marriage, and this will be the breaking point. Because as we established in the beginning, Stannis is uncompromising, and will see it as a grave insult to throw such accusations at his brother, even though he is also fully aware of Renly's sexuality. He'll want retribution for such turncloaking. We do have some leverage in Loras, who may dissuade his family from outright attacking the Stags there and then out of love for Renly. And he is heir to their house in the show, and still pretty important to his house in the books, so his words will have some weight. But we all know who wears the trousers in that household. There is, however, a positive in that Renly still living may motivate Loras to do what he can to forestall an alliance with the Lannisters, and the Tyrells may even outright sit out the siege of King's Landing and side with the winner, giving the Lannisters a very poetic taste of their own medicine. This, however, is a necessary and crucial step. Tyrells be damned. Bobby B rallied the realm because he was an excellent battlefield commander and warrior, but also a charismatic and likable leader. His brothers are not without these traits, but they only have one half, and are far too crippled in the missing half to function independently. We need Renly on side if we want to get the one true king on the throne. Also, please stop typing the comment where you're suggesting that the Tyrells may stick around and do something underhanded with Renly. We addressed that in step 3. Thanks, guys. Step number 2, which is actually the second half of step 1. Get the North early. Like, right now. Dispatch riders, go, 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 now. No time to waste with this one, no time at all. Stannis expects the North's help and loyalty because Ned has already declared him as the legal heir. But when it didn't arrive, Stannis began to brood and see them as disloyal traitors. When Robb declared himself king in the North, that was basically game over, and Robb became a full-blown enemy. The issue is, Stannis saw himself as entitled to everyone's support because the throne was legally his, which, kind of fair enough, but still. This led to a lot of waiting around and moping, expecting everyone to come to him, a mistake he does indeed learn from when he goes to help the wall. However, if step 1 is followed, we have Renly there to advise Stannis on how to win the love of allies. What will Renly advise? Go and help the North and bring them into your debt. Riverrun is under siege, Robb is moving to liberate it, but he is hindered by a bastard named Walder. Send him a little help before he's crowned and inform him of his father's support of your claim. You even have a letter as proof. You don't need to send your entire army, but a small token force or perhaps even part of your fleet to ferry the Northerners to the Riverlands is going to go a long way in making nice with them. Stannis could even offer Robb the honor of personally executing Joffrey. And what an honor that would be, in order to sweeten the deal.
I'm going to give you his head as well.
Or maybe he'll give me yours.
This, combined with step 1, is the most crucial step if the Stags wish to win the game. Robb only became an enemy to Stannis once that crown went on his head. Until that moment, Robb is a potential ally, and perhaps the most valuable one at that. He has a sizable army, and as we later find out, is an absolute unit of a commander. Not to mention his motivation for vengeance against the Lannisters is just and noble, and makes for great propaganda when you're trying to win over the peasantry and noble houses to your cause. Now, I know there was no way for Stannis to have the magical foresight to predict the North would start getting filthy treasonous forts and declare independence. But do remember, these vids do have a touch of everything comes up roses for the chosen house, and it's not completely far-fetched to assume that with so much turmoil in the realm, that the more powerful factions may start getting ideas beyond their station, and that advisors may realize this and suggest it might be best to try and preempt it. Now, Stannis would never think this way, but a power-hungry Renly might, and if step 1 is followed, we've got him on side as an advisor. This is such a critical moment. Stannis must win over Robb before he's crowned. It's the game-winning move for the War of the Five Kings, or, well, 4 in this scenario. Otherwise, he's another traitor to the pile, and well, we already know what happens to both sides and it's too depressing to contemplate. Tom also shared some interesting insight in that having Stannis and Robb work together kind of invokes imagery of Ned and Robert when they fought the rebellion, and it might galvanize a few more supporters behind them. It also helps if Stannis has got Robb on side in bullying Renly into submission, because now Stannis has a much larger army. Like I said, step 1 and 2 are basically just step 1 together because they synergize really well and make the other moves' outcome way more feasible. On to step 3, and that is contain the wild card and the War of the Five Kings is over. Now, we can't say with certainty, with Renly still around, that the Tyrells would actually throw in with the Lannisters. As we said, Loras has some weight behind his words as the heir in the show and an important member of his house in the books. All we can say with a high degree of confidence is that they likely won't declare for Stannis since he can't give them half the throne. At least not without significant leverage or underhanded political maneuvering that is outside the realms of Stannis' character. So how do we deal with this? Now, there are actually 2 options, and much like the Walder disagreement me and Tom had, fuck you Tom, you smarmy argument-winning git, I'd like to know what you think is more likely. Now, Stannis may not be capable of underhanded political maneuvering, but Renly sure is. Now in this scenario, Renly has agreed to join Stannis on the condition he be made heir until Stannis has a son. He's still himself, and he still wants that throne. This new status as the legal heir is an incredibly useful bargaining chip. I wouldn't put it past Renly to approach the Tyrells in secret with notions of maintaining the marriage and suggesting that perhaps the Manus will meet with an unfortunate accident once he's taken the throne. This seems like a very Renly thing to do. As nice a guy as he isn't without a ruthless streak in order to get what he wants. And the Tyrells, from what we know of them, would likely be on board with this idea.
Whatever you need to do, you are a king.
Use Manus to win the war, then get rid of him when the realm is under a stag banner once again. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think this is within Renly's pedigree, or do you think the stags are going to have to do this the hard way? Let us know in those comments, guys. If this is how things go down, well, the Lannisters are so dead their corpses will have to find a way to die twice. The might of a united Stormlands, the North, and Highgarden is far too big a force to contend with. You can basically skip to the step where Stannis sits the throne. The second way the stags may have to deal with them is simple containment. Now, the other possibility is that the Tyrells don't put much stock in Renly's idea, or don't see the risk as worth it, and as such, decide to bugger off, making them a direct enemy with the potential to interfere. Remember, this is Stannis we're talking about. Not declaring for him would be nothing short of treason, and he's smart enough to know that the Tyrells know that, making their desertion a clear as day statement they don't intend to suffer the consequences of their choice, and will be looking for an ally that outright opposes him in order to protect themselves. Despite being traitors and therefore a direct enemy, the Tyrells don't at this moment require a boot pressed down hard on their neck ready to break it. But they most certainly need to be subdued and contained in order to prevent them aiding the opposing factions, as they are the only undeclared faction large and powerful enough to interfere that is making moves. There is also the Vale as a powerful tide turner, but they're pretty happy to stay in their castles and stay out of the war, and we're happy to leave them to their weird childcare practices and moon doors. In the original story, the Baratheon victory at King's Landing was all but assured were it not for the Tyrells declaring for the Lannisters and reinforcing Tywin's army. Tywin is a smart man, and not one for sharing power or owing favors. Were he capable of lifting that siege with just the Lannister forces alone, he bloody well would have done in my estimations. Now in this scenario, we don't only have Stannis and his sellswords, but Renly and the house is loyal to him also. Needless to say, King's Landing is for the taking if the Tyrells are kept out of the picture. But even with Renly and his supporting houses, the Baratheons don't quite have the strength to split up and siege the capital. Westeros tries its best to keep to realistic medieval battle. Well, besides the magic zombies and dragons, Tom, at least. And as such, the Baratheons need a roughly 3-to-1 numbers advantage in the siege of the capital, especially when the imp plays his treacherously dishonorable hand at the Blackwater. Stannis is no fool, and I can imagine Tyrell interference crossed his mind. I would also bet money that if he'd had the resources to tie up the Tyrells, he would have done. If only we'd gained the loyalty of an honorable and powerful faction in earlier steps who could perhaps help us keep those pesky flower-loving snakes busy. Oh, that's right, we got the bloody North, haven't we? Stannis is an excellent military commander, And Robb is no slouch either. Both of them will know that neither can offer the Tyrells anything of value they would consider, whereas the Lannisters can offer them the Iron Throne. Now, Stannis is the crush them for their treachery type of guy, and I can respect that. However, with Robb and Renly there, they might suggest a different tact. That being, march the northern forces to Highgarden with Renly in tow and give the Tyrells one last chance to bend the knee to the one true king, or be destroyed. This would be the Tyrells' last chance to ensure their survival. They've spat in Stannis' face once, he most certainly wouldn't tolerate it a second time. This will also play well for Stannis in the public eye and as a strategic military action, showing the realm he's capable of forgiveness and mercy, at least supposedly, but also allowing him to have allies where he needs them in force. The likelihood of the Tyrells accepting is slim to none. They know of Stannis and his uncompromising nature, and no matter what they do now, they've already proven to be traitors once and will be punished accordingly. There is no benefit to having a change of heart now besides stalling out their downfall. In the unlikely scenario the Tyrells accept, Robb would likely be ordered to keep them where they are regardless. Robb just needs to be on the alert for treachery and squash it if any attempt is made. If they refuse, which is the more likely scenario at this point in the game, Robb can lay siege to Highgarden and keep the Tyrells holed up in their castle. I'd like to note this siege should be planned with a keep the defenders locked up mentality rather than a genuine attempt to seize the castle. Robb needs to be alert for the Lannisters coming to the Tyrells' aid and needs to be ready to fight a small, time-wasting skirmish, but ultimately break off with his forces mostly intact should the Lions show up. I also feel I must mention, as someone will bring it up in the comments, that for this to be most effective, the timing of this move must be carefully planned out. If Robb goes too early, the Lannisters can arrive, lift the siege, and will almost certainly have the support of the Tyrells thanks to this little stunt, and Robb could be routed and unable to regroup in a meaningful way to assist in the siege of the capital. The Lannisters and Tyrells can then arrive to King's Landing in force like they did in the canon story, and unless Robb is in a position to regroup to hit the Lannister-Tyrell relief army in the back hard, the game is up for the Stags. If done too late, the Lannister-Tyrell alliance may already be secured and mobilized for battle, and as much as Robb is a talented commander, he can't fight two of the biggest armies in Westeros single-handed and could see his army destroyed. Although he may still be able to harass both armies in a way that buys Stannis enough time to seize the capital. Though with both armies rallied and organized, Robb's losses will be extreme. And we need those bloody Northerners later. This move must be made before the Tyrell forces are fully mobilized for battle and joined with Tywin's, yet close enough at the time of Stannis' attack that should Tywin opt to liberate his potential allies, there will be a lot of chaos and disorder between the Lannisters and Tyrells, making it easier for Robb to fight a quick, time-wasting battle while minimizing his losses long enough for Stannis to secure the capital. This is advantageous no matter how Tywin responds. If the Lannister army rides to free the Tyrells from Robb's siege, King's Landing is lost. In both mediums, the city was on the very verge of falling before help arrived, and that was without hindrance from the young wolf. If Tywin rides to lift the siege of King's Landing without help, he will also likely lose. Remember, he wouldn't have got reinforcements if he didn't know for sure he needed them, and he is facing a far better, far more skilled commander than himself. Without the numbers advantage, the L was all but assured. No matter what Tywin does, this is game over for the Lannisters and the Tyrells. Tywin will either be killed in battle or executed for treason. Joffrey will be handed to Robb for a long overdue neck checkup appointment with ice. Tyrion will likely be executed for his trick in the Blackwater, and Cersei and Jaime are likely to be executed for the crime of incest, along with their children. The only way the Lannisters might survive is through Kevin. He might be distanced enough from the treason and incest in Stannis' eyes that he may pardon Kevin on the grounds of Tywin's brother just doing his duty to his family, though this won't be without punishment. If not, the Lannisters join the reigns and become nothing but a memory and a burnt pile of ashes at the hands of the Red Lady. How bad the Tyrells come off honestly depends on their actions. If they took Renly up on his betrayal offer and feigned loyal support, it honestly comes down to whether or not you think Renly can have Stannis killed discreetly without the Red Lady catching wind of it. If this is how things play out, we'll just say it here, the realm is likely buggered and will once again fall into turmoil. Renly would be a good king, but not a strong king able to contend with the likes of White Walkers and dragons. He'd likely surrender the throne at the sight of Drogon. If this is how things played out, this would be game over for the Baratheons. If they decide to rise up against Stannis with the Lannisters, they will likely also be nothing but a memory, and the seat awarded to a house that was loyal to Stannis. Give it to Davos Mannis, come on, he deserves it. Loras may survive though, through pleading on Renly's part, but best I could see Stannis offering him is to take the black. If they decided to stay out of the siege and quote-unquote support Stannis after Robb offers the ultimatum, there will still likely be some very nasty repercussions involving fire for some of the Tyrell household.
A good act does not wash out the bad, nor a bad the good.
And with this victory comes what we all wanted all along. Stannis, the one true king, sits upon the Iron Throne. With a loyal Warden of the North, and no rival houses with the strength to challenge his claim, the Mannis can at last finally be...
Hello there.
Oh, for the love of the Lord of Light, duty never ends, does it? Now, I normally save the tidbits and extra thoughts till the end, but I feel in this video it might be worth mentioning a few relevant ones at the halfway mark of the game, while Mannis catches his breath. It's important to note that Stannis is aware of Dany's existence up until her marriage to Khal Drogo. He knows she's likely coming with a Dothraki horde at her back, but holds no knowledge of her dragons. So he'll know to prep for her potential invasion, but unless the whispers reach his ears, he'll have no idea dragons are on their way, at least not feasibly until he's actually on the Iron Throne. In this scenario, Robb doesn't get red-wedded, despite likely still giving Walder the finger with his marriage to Jane/Talisa. Walder and Roose only got brave because they had assurances from Tywin regarding the breaking of guest right, something they are most certainly not getting from Stannis. In this scenario, Tywin is either a corpse or a pile of ashes long before this wedding can come to fruition. Sorry Walder, you'll have to sulk. Also, Robb's forces haven't been massacred along with many other loyal northern houses. Pushing the Ironborn out and reclaiming their castle should be quite easy for them. With the realm at peace once again, Stannis might in fact pay Robb back for his support and help him reclaim the north, along with a harsh, rather burny punishment for Balon for his treason. Theon will also likely be dead at either the hands of Ramsay's punishment or at Robb's hands for his betrayal. This is considering that Robb still sent Theon off to the Iron Islands to gain allies. There is all the possibility with Stannis at his side that Robb might not send Theon off, and in that case, Theon's still alive and well. And speaking of punishments, Oberyn lives in this scenario, which is just peachy. With the Lannisters eradicated before our favourite Dornish prince ever sets foot in the
Stinking shit pile of a city.
There is no trial by combat, and no head splats. Oberyn may still be quite pissed though, having been robbed of the opportunity to kill Tywin himself. As for the Mountain, he's either dead from battle or on the run as an outlaw, which might serve to help Stannis when dealing with the Dornish later. And up at the Wall, Jon likely won't be stabbed in this scenario. With his brother close by and the uncompromising Mannis as king, the mutineers may think twice before attempting any kind of coup. You have to remember they only tried it in the first place because Jon was left with literally no allies close by. Stannis would not be forgiving to those who broke their oaths and killed their Lord Commander. Might still happen, but a lot less likely. Let us know if you think the mutineers would still try their luck with Robb around and Stannis in charge. And speaking of the Night's Watch, the Wildling army would still be defeated at the Wall. Stannis would likely send forces along with Robb as well. It's barely a battle in the original, and would be nothing more than a footnote here too. And finally, with the North and Stormlands united, do you think Littlefinger could have done anything to undermine their efforts? Or would he have sided with them as the clear winners? I imagine he would be executed by Stannis upon learning of his attempts to broker an alliance between the Lannisters and Tyrells. But I'm keen to know what impact you think he would have had. And with that breather out of the way, let the game continue. Number 4, the Faith Militant and the Red Lady. Make no mistake, Stannis will have these zealous bastards to contend with, king or no king. And here's the thing. It'll actually be worse for Stannis than it was for Cersei. With Melisandre at his side pushing conversion to her foreign religion, the Faith will likely not only become emboldened, but also likely draw far more supporters to their cause. Now the Mannis won't make the idiot mistake of sanctioning the arming of the Faith, but he'll have nothing short of a full-scale revolt on his hands in the capital when the Red Lady starts preaching and demanding temples come down to make way for the Lord of Light. Now, how this is dealt with depends on which version of Stannis you're considering. In the book, it's kind of clear Stannis doesn't give much of a toss about the Lord of Light or religion in general, and sees Mel's magic as more of a means to an end. He knows not everyone believes in the Lord of Light and pragmatically accepts that. This version of Stannis would likely put his foot down hard on both Melisandre and the High Sparrow, with a simple threat of, coexist, or I'll have the one who starts it crushed. Now, I'm no fool. These are fanatics. One side will make a move on the other eventually, and I think the Manus will put down the instigating side with force and the sword. No matter which side starts it, Book Manus will surely end it and keep it ended. However, in the show, Stannis is a tad more fanatical towards the Lord of Light, so much so that he was capable of... No, Tom, I can't bear to watch that scene. You will know what I'm talking about. This version of Stannis would still be putting his foot down, I have no doubt, but almost definitely in favor of Melisandre and the Lord of Light. It would be a long and bloody process, but the capital, the faith, and the Sparrow would convert or die. No two ways about it. And if they maintain their zealotry, well, they will burn like the rest. Either way, the faith is pacified, but we cannot discount that this will come at a cost to Stannis' forces that might be useful later. Step number 5. Make friends with the Dornish. Now, the Dornish are no fans of the Lannisters, that much is known, but they are also no fans of the Baratheons either. Robert did not admonish Tywin for presenting him with the bodies of Elia Martell's children. He ignored it and allowed Tywin to maintain his status despite the heinous crime. Dorne will not have forgotten that, and when push comes to shove, are more incentivized to side with Dany and her dragons. And that's even if you're not addressing their master plan to wed Dany to a Martell in the books. So Stannis needs to make nice with these guys. Last thing he wants when the ice zombies and dragons show up is a Dornish spear shoved up his backside. How can he do this? Well, as mentioned in a tidbit, the Mountain is either dead or on the run in this scenario. It would be a solid gesture on the Manus' part to either present the Martells with Gregor's head if they've already killed him, or allow the Dornish to assist the realm in his capture, and ultimately allow them to dispense justice to the monster. This will need to be followed with formal apologies to the Dornish royalty for the deaths of the young Rhaenyra and Aegon. Stannis needs to make it clear now that he had no part in the act and that he finds it an equally disgusting and terrible event. Stannis sees the world in black and white for the most part. As stiff and uncompromising as he is, I think he would acknowledge his brother's wrongdoing and attempt to make good for it. Justice is Stannis' strongest bargaining chip when concerning the Dornish. This is a good start, though more will have to be done in order to secure Dornish loyalty. Luckily, since the War of the Five Kings has been wrapped up quicker than usual in this scenario, Stannis has time to prove he's a good king and bring stability to the realm. Hopefully this will be enough to keep the Dornish on side. Though dragons are quite persuasive, Stannis might have to deal with the Dornish regardless. Number 6. The Ironborn Menace. Balon is most definitely dead and scattered if Stannis had anything to say about it. But that doesn't mean Euron will just lie down, neither will Yara/Asha. Both Ironborn factions know that Stannis won't trust them as far as he can throw them, and they'll both beeline for Dany. There's nothing Stannis can do about Yara/Asha, he'll have to contend with her later. But Euron won the King's Moot and is still on the Iron Islands. Now Stannis needs to use force and do it early. The Ironborn have already rebelled and invaded the north. No way they're going to be allowed to build an impossibly large fleet under Stannis and Robb's watch, even if Euron offers to put it to use for the crown. Issue is, Stannis has nothing to offer Euron to incentivize it. This is one of those moments where Stannis' uncompromising nature will hinder him. I can't see Stannis sanctioning pirates and letting Euron wreak havoc on foreign ships as long as they do it in the name of the crown. He's just not that sort of person. Nope, the only way I think Stannis can justifiably deal with the Greyjoys and the Ironborn is to destroy them and instill new laws to the island. They've rebelled against the crown twice now. Getting a second chance from Stannis is reserved for those who he loves and cares for dearly.
Balon's neck would have bent under his sword, because I do not forget, I do not pardon.
Let alone a third for a faction he has been to war with twice now. No. I think the only sensible move that's in keeping with Stannis' character is to tear the Greyjoys down and rebuild the Iron Islands as a nation loyal to the crown. Another interesting insight from Tom here, he suggested that if Theon has survived and didn't betray, that Robb might persuade Stannis to let Theon have the Iron Islands throne, keeping it with the Greyjoys and hopefully keeping the population loyal. It might result in less bloodshed and help maintain Iron Island culture. Now, like with the Faith Militant, we also have to acknowledge here that if the Iron Islands are sort of crushed and destroyed and deposed and have to be rebuilt, this again takes a toll on Stannis' forces for when he has to face the White Walkers and Dany. Now, if Theon was utilized and bloodshed was minimal, it might not be that bad, but if it was full-scale war, deposing, and a lengthy transition period, we cannot discount that this will have cost Stannis quite a bit, and it may make Dany even more dangerous than she already is. Speaking of Dany, Number 7, the Mother of Dragons. As we mentioned in our tidbits, in the original story, Stannis is aware of Daenerys, but not that she has dragons, so he may have mentally started preparing for the arrival of a Dothraki horde before getting the throne. But news of her dragons never reached his ears because he was stuck in the north saving the Night's Watch and figuring out how to kill treacherous Boltons. But from the position of the Iron Throne, we think it's very likely the news reaches him, and he'll begin to prepare. Now against the Mother of Dragons, what's our Manus got going for him? Well, he's without a doubt the most experienced and skilled battle commander currently living at the moment. That's something not to be underestimated. A healthy knowledge of conducting war and a keen strategic mind can still be useful, even if your enemy unfairly has medieval flying nuclear weapons. He'll also potentially have a united realm to face her with. Unlike Cersei, Stannis will have the support of the North, and with Renly presenting a softer, more approachable side to Stannis, he might be able to unify the realm behind a single united front. He's also got the faith of the Iron Bank of Braavos. Providing Stannis sends Davos to do the talking, they might be able to hire sellswords, assassins, and fund anti-dragon weaponry. And finally, his most unpredictable and potentially most valuable asset, he has the backing of the Red Lady. Though we have no clear defined or established rules for how Melisandre's magic works, or if it is indeed a divine entity, we can't rule out the possibility that she might have a trick up her sleeve for dealing with dragons. That is, providing she doesn't turn cloak at the sight of the fire breathers. Magic is the best defense against other magic, and right now she's all Stannis has got on the magic front. And, yes, that's about it. We won't sugarcoat this. Stannis the Manus has his nuts in a vice on this one. He can outthink Dany as a commander through experience. He could even face the might of the Unsullied and Dothraki hordes and find a way to outfight them on the battlefield, especially with the aid of the North. It's those damn dragons that screw over the one true king. Nevertheless, what are some potential ways Stannis could overcome Dany in this scenario? Please note we're approaching this assuming Stannis has the resources of a unified realm in order to gather intelligence, plan, and prepare accordingly. Although, as Tom has pointed out in my notes, everyone has a plan until they're punched in the face. So the first and easiest way for Stannis to get Dany off the board is to hire a faceless man. They seem unstoppable once they've been given a target. Hell, look at Arya and Senor, come at me bro, I'm the mother effing Night King. Bottom line, don't mess with the faceless dudes. Now, this may not be very honorable, but Stannis has a strict sense of duty to the realm. Even when fighting a losing war, he came to the aid of the Night's Watch to protect the realm. I could see him justifying Dany's assassination as a means to protect the realm from the suffering that would be unleashed through Dragonfire. With Dany killed and no clear successor, her faction would likely disintegrate, and even if they don't, their ace card, the dragons, will no longer have a mother to ride and command them into battle, giving the Manus a much easier time of defeating her army. The conventional and slightly more suicidal possibility is that Stannis and the realm sail out to meet Dany and all but destroy her manpower army before she can make landfall, nullifying her army's advantages. With the War of the Five Kings ended much sooner, Stannis and the realm have more prep time in order to build a fleet and an army. This strategy would require a good commander, a very large fleet, an advantageous location, and most importantly, the element of surprise.
Dany kind of forgot about the Iron Fleet, and they certainly haven't forgotten about her, and they're just waiting for her to come back.
If Stannis can hit Dany's army while it's stuck on the ships, the Dothraki and Unsullied will be unable to leverage their battlefield advantages. This does, however, come with a massive winged elephant in the room, and that is the damage Stannis' forces will suffer if Dany can get onto one of her dragons. With no Qyburn, we have no Scorpion. The fleet will be at the mercy of the Fire Breathers. The attack would have to be swift and decisive, so that Dany is left with little to no army once she touches down at Dragonstone. This is perhaps the riskiest and most likely move, but it is an option, and even if successful, we have to acknowledge the losses will be catastrophic either way, leaving Stannis with little to face the White Walkers with. But we do have to point out that dragons are a fantastic terror weapon. but with no army behind them and only 3 at your disposal, eventually they are going to get picked off, and Dany will eventually be at the king's mercy. We saw what happened in the Meereenese arena. Dragons of Drogon size can be wounded, and most certainly killed.
If it bleeds, we can kill it.
Another possibility is Stannis learning from his mistakes and turning it against the enemy. He saw the devastation wildfire had on his fleet, and now he's the king has access to a large stockpile located under King's Landing. It's the closest thing to an equalizer the Manis has when concerning dragons. Picture Dany's fleet sailing to the beaches of Dragonstone, only to be burned to a crisp at the drop of a torch. This would of course require enormous prep time, but with the realm at peace, Stannis has time to organize and coordinate efforts like this. And lastly, we have the potential of the Red Lady. What can Melisandre actually do? Who knows? But we know she has magic. Maybe she could birth a demon shadow dragon to attack Dany. Ooh, that is not a nice image to imagine. Unlike the Starks, negotiation is off the table for Stannis, even with a tactful Renly at his side. His claim rests on the right of conquest that nullified Dany's. There is no scenario where he can lawfully give up the throne by his own code and morals. He must defeat or kill Dany to keep his own head and his arse on that throne. These are a few of our ideas. We think the one where he sails out and tries to sink Dany's fleet is the most realistic, and the Faceless Man one is the most effective. But I'm keen to know what you guys think. How could Stannis have dealt with Dany when she eventually showed up? Would he have employed just one of our suggestions, some of them, all of them, something else entirely? And what ideas do you have? Let us know down in those comments. On to the final hurdle, and then we might finally get some peace. Number 8, the Long Night. The throne is safe for the Manis now, at least from the living. But what about the dead? The walkers are here, and the Long Night approaches. Now, under Stannis, we believe the realm would fare much better than it did originally. Sure, we don't have Dany's dragons, but they didn't seem to do much anyway, besides provide the Night King with some cool hacks to get that wall down easier. Now I think even without the dragon, the walkers would have gotten past the wall. They've been building that army for Lord knows how long before the dragons were ever born. Why would they do that if they knew there was a magical impregnable barrier that would stop them? Those silver-skinned freaks had a way through. I'm telling you, Tom, I'm not mad. However, with Jon likely unstabbed in this scenario, he's able to warn unred-wedded Robb, who can then in turn warn unbastardized in the show Stannis. Of all the 5 kings, well, technically 4 in this scenario, Jon has been fortunately left with the 2 who would actually take his words seriously. Robb through brotherly loyalty, and Stannis through Melisandre's word and his good judge of character, for the most part. With no turmoil in the realm, Stannis can bring a united Westeros together to face the Walkers, equipping the army with dragonglass, marching it to the wall to stop the Walkers then and there. There may not even be a crappy, disappointing battle at Winterfell. Just make sure Jon is alive and well to fulfill his role as the actual Azor Ahai D&D. How costly the battle is depends on how costly it was to repel the Faith, the Ironborn, and Dany and her dragons. But I do think under the Manis, the realm would have fared very well against the White Walkers. For one, he understands how battle works, and likely wouldn't put his bloody catapults on the outside of the wall. Just saying. And that concludes how the Baratheons could have won the Game of Thrones. And they all lived happily ever after, and everything was fair because the one true king sat on the throne. Before we wrap up, as usual, we'd like to address some tidbits like we did in our Stark video and halfway through this one. Otherwise, our comments tend to flood with a few more points than we already know are coming. So, number 1, Arya doesn't become a faceless man in this scenario, which really kinda sucks. Likelihood is she's reunited with Robb after being ransomed back by the Hound. And hopefully the Hound finds a nice spot of land and some well-earned peace with his reward money. Number 2, we know Littlefinger will be climbing the ladder of chaos, and Varys turned out, in the show at least, to be a Dany supporter, and in the books, well, he doesn't support Stannis, let's put it that way. Now, I think both of them are stopped in their tracks. I don't think Stannis would have the patience for either and would likely oust them from their positions of power at best, or execute them for treason at worst. What impact do you think they would have had? I'm really keen to know, let us know down in those comments, guys. Number 3, Winterfell is likely still sacked in this scenario, just maybe not from Theon, so Bran still gets to become the three-eyed useless the original way. Number 4, just because Stannis secures Robb's loyalty in this scenario, doesn't mean the other northern houses don't get funny ideas about independence. While I believe Robb would be true to his word if Stannis did earn his loyalty early enough, other Northerners might not be so excited to bend the knee to a Southern king, resulting in some turmoil. Which houses do you think would have caused problems, and how would they have done it? Let me know down in the comments, guys. And that's our take. What did we get right, what did we miss, and what did we get wrong? I'm sure you'll have no problem telling us. Thanks for watching, guys.